I'd like to start by introducing Mike Schreiner, a member of the Provincial Parliament for Guelph and leader of the Green Party of Ontario. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you for that excellent introduction and just highlighting of the Marcolongo farm. And Danny, I want to thank you for that meaningful land acknowledgement and just express my gratitude to Indigenous peoples for the teachings I've learned about how to care for this land, the water, the plants, and the animals and people who live here. That is especially relevant when it comes to protecting water. Water is essential for life. And I believe government has a sacred duty to protect our water as a public good, prioritizing water for people and communities. And it's why I'm so excited to see the groundbreaking work that the Greenbelt West Coalition is doing on Greenbelt expansion, and why I wholeheartedly support the work you're doing and the expansion proposal you'll be putting forward today. I can tell you from my own work in Guelph, water and water protection has been a top priority for my constituents. And partly that's driven by the fact that Guelph is the largest city in Canada that still relies solely for groundwater for its drinking water source. And after consultation with many of the groups represented here today, including Wellington Water Watchers, the Protect Our Moraine Coalition, and others, I put forward a private member's bill to protect the Paris Galt Moraine based on the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Act, with some additional protections added around cumulative water taking and below the water table aggregate extraction. But I've always felt that that was the foundation to demonstrate how we could put forward legislation to expand protection for moraines across the province, and to provide a model for how we could advocate and promote Greenbelt expansion based on the Crombie report, which talked about expanding the Greenbelt to cover all the waterways throughout the greater Golden Horseshoe area, which I know is the foundational to the work that you're doing. And so I had hoped today to welcome all of you to the Marcolongo farm, to welcome you to Guelph, to welcome my legislative colleagues, MPP Shaw and MPP Bly, as well as I recognize there's a number of local councillors and candidates from the region who are joining us today. And I appreciate the fact that we had to pivot online quickly. But I think looking at the importance of the Marcolongo farm, the importance of the Paris Galt Moraine, and the importance of Greenbelt protection when you're there experiencing it is so important. And I would argue that while we have, and Kevin, you are so right, we have had successive governments put in important and vital protections for the environment. I would say, especially when it comes to water protection, as it relates to quarries, water bottling operations, and other development proposals, we haven't had strong enough protections in place, which is why expanding Greenbelt protection is so vital. And it's especially vital at this moment in time, where over the last 3 years, we've seen a systematic attack on environmental protections, whether it's removing the scientific ability of conservation authorities to protect our water, whether it's taking away municipalities' ability to deny below the water table or put conditions on below the water table aggregate extraction, or the dismantling of the environmental assessment process, the overuse and misuse of ministerial zoning orders, the highway expansion proposals that would pave over parts of the Greenbelt and farmland, the pressure being put on municipalities to expand urban boundaries. And thankfully, I'm sure MPP Shaw will talk about how Hamilton has resisted that. All of that is a systematic attack on environmental protections, and we need a systematic and policy response to restore those protections. And so I would argue throughout the greater Golden Horseshoe, we need Greenbelt expansion to protect all of our waterways, whether it's Duffins Creek and Crothers Creek in the east, the Lake Simcoe watershed in the central, or the proposal that you're putting forward for the Greenbelt West are all vitally important. And I would argue that we actually need to go beyond that and put in permanent protection for prime farmland in Ontario, We're losing 175 acres of farmland a day. That's the equivalent of 5 family farms a week. We simply can't feed ourselves if we're going to lose farmland at that rate. We've lost 75% of our wetlands in Southern Ontario, which are vital to protecting drinking water and protecting us from climate-fueled extreme weather events causing flooding. So we need permanent protection for wetlands in Ontario. We've proposed, the Ontario Greens have proposed that 25% of our natural areas must be permanently protected by 2025, 30% by 2030. And that we need to address the housing affordability crisis in a way that builds up supply through general density, building missing middle supply within our existing urban boundaries. We simply can't afford as a society to have this false choice between tall and sprawl. We absolutely have to eliminate sprawl for folks. And if affordability is your #1 concern, the current government sprawl agenda will make life less affordable because it will force people to commute further and further distances just to find an affordable place to call home, which will threaten our environment, threaten our water, threaten our farmland, and make the climate crisis even worse. So I want to thank the Greenbelt West Coalition. I wholeheartedly endorse your proposal. And I want to thank all the citizens and all the grassroots efforts in our area, in our region, who are fighting to protect our water, our land, and the people who live here.